Today, I have with me CEO of Dash Core Group, Ryan Taylor, who's here to speak with us about a proposal he has into the network now to change how Dash's block reward gets allocated. This is insane. How are you, Ryan?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. So I've just looked at the proposal you've made, and currently it's passing, and by a fairly wide margin, with roughly 10 days to go left in the voting cycle by the time this video goes up. So first of all, how do you feel about that?
Well, I feel very good. I've put a lot of work personally into the research and proposal itself, and informing the community about what it's about and why and what the rationale is. And so to have a good outcome is obviously, it feels good to reach this milestone. So I certainly hope, I don't want to jinx it, and I certainly hope that it stays in passing territory by the time the budget cycle ends, but it's looking very good.
So then first of all, why, in your opinion, does a block reward reallocation need to happen within Dash?
Well, it's a very complicated answer, but I'll try to simplify it as much as I can. Whenever a masternode on Dash's network is created, it requires collateral of 1,000 Dash. And in the past, the number of masternodes on the network was increasing for a long period of time, and that, kind of limited the growth of the circulating coins that weren't collateralizing masternodes. And I did some research that showed that there was not only correlation but causation between these attributes on the network, and that trend had reversed, that the number of masternodes was actually shrinking and projected to continue to shrink. And as that occurred, a large number of coins were re-entering circulating supply. And our growth rate over the last 2 years has exceeded 20% per year. And, that creates a kind of inflation, and especially against some of the other coins in the marketplace. That really was causing the coin itself to lose value, and for people to lose faith in its ability to retain value, which has somewhat of a snowball effect to it. And so what this proposal is all about is addressing that shortcoming of the network in a way that permanently fixes that, in a way that extends our runway beyond this period of time when the number of coins being created can cause that to happen.
What are the changes specifically, and how are they different from what Dash has now?
Well, right now, Dash has a block reward allocation that is split 3 ways. And that is 45% towards masternodes. This is rewarding masternodes from operating on the network. 45% is allocated towards mining, similar to the mining that occurs in Bitcoin. And the remaining 10% is allocated towards treasury. This is really anything else the network needs, whether that be funding legal work or development or marketing or business development or local teams, education, those types of things. And that has proven very effective. Our growth rate in usage has been quite high. The number of transactions on the network has been growing steadily for years. The number of wallets, the number of active addresses, almost any metric, we've been growing. And so we want to retain all of that. But what this proposal does is it reallocates a portion of that reward from miners to masternodes over an extended period of time. What that does is it encourages the retention or creation of masternodes by incentivizing that activity. In the process of doing that, it slows this growth rate of circulating supply to a manageable level. And so our projections are that we'll drop from roughly 20 to 25% annual growth today to less than 10% annual growth in circulating supply going forward. And we're going to track this metric and make sure that, you know, we're tracking against what our targets are, and that it's working. But we believe that this will work, and it will, you know, kind of address that major shortcoming of the Dash network, which is, you know, the currency itself and making the currency itself better. And in the process, we want to make sure that we're maintaining the security of the network. In some ways, this reallocation is a recognition of the value of chain locks that we rolled out on the network last year. And so we can maintain a high level of security without the same allocation towards mining going forward. And so, you know, this really captures some of the value that was created when chain locks were deployed to the network, and allows all participants to the network to participate in that value creation. You know, it seems obvious that masternodes would benefit from this, but not in the way that you would think.
Right.
When you incentivize more masternodes on the network, you're going to get more masternodes. And so although each payment may be larger, each masternode is going to be paid less frequently as a result of the change. And net rewards will roughly stay the same in terms of Dash rewarded per year per masternode. What will change is that anyone who holds Dash, including masternodes who have 1,000 Dash collateral invested, would benefit financially from this reallocation. And so it really is something that allows any Dash holder to benefit from the reallocation. And even miners, you know, it's counterintuitive, but even miners are likely to benefit from this because it isn't net neutral effect on price. So they may be getting less Dash denominated rewards, but if it impacts our price and our ability to grow and attract users, it can actually be beneficial to miners as well.
Right. Yeah, I like to think of it that we'd all rather be paid like $1 million once a year than to be paid $10,000 once a month. Like,
yeah.
Another thing that kind of boggles my mind, though, Ryan, I wonder if you have any insight as to how it's possible, is how the numbers play out. Because so with the current block reward of being like, you know, 50% miners, 50% masternodes, and to shift it so it's like this, so it's like 40% miners and 60% masternodes, for that, what to me seems like a relatively small shift to result in, what did you say, like a halvening of Dash's annual inflation rate? Like that to me just seems wild that such a small shift could create such a large result.
Yeah, it was actually surprising to me too. And I was initially of the belief that masternodes valued primarily the nominal reward. That is the reward before the effects of inflation. So that headline number that we all see when you see what the ROI of operating a masternode is. And I thought that had trended down, but was likely to flatline. And when I dug more deeply into the numbers and analyzing past behavior, I discovered that isn't entirely true. They also take into account, to a certain extent, the inflation that is created with new coins being formed. In other words, there is a kind of post-inflation effect of the dilution of new coins, and masternodes don't actually make a profit on that metric. Currently today, the dilution is a little bit more than the reward. And so even if I operate my masternode with a 100% efficiency and generate all of the rewards that are due to me throughout the year, after the effects of new coins being created, I actually have a lower share of the overall Dash in circulation than I did at the beginning of the year. And so what masternode rewards do today is effectively reduce the rate at which we're diluted by the new coins being created. And so with this change, it actually shifts that to become net positive within a year or two. And you can imagine that that has an outsized impact on the incentives to operate a masternode. And so, yeah, I was as surprised by the results as anybody. And that was thanks to one of our team members really pushing me on some of my assumptions and forcing me to prove them. And I'm thankful for that, because I think we ended up with a much better answer as a result. So, yeah, it was an interesting process to go through for sure.
So should the proposal continue passing then up until the deadline and officially pass, how difficult, if difficult, will it be to implement?
Well, we're at a very fortuitous time to put this proposal on the network, because we've completed work on version 0.16, which will be, it's on testnet right now. If this passes in this cycle, we will have the ability to incorporate that code into the version 0.16 release.
Oh, wow.
And so we're actually delaying the release of 0.16 by a couple of weeks to make this happen. Once it officially passes, we can go ahead with the release of the code. From there, it's up to the network to adopt it. So the vote is one step of the process, but the network actually has to download the new version of the software and implement it.
Right.
That could take some time, but we're anticipating that the reallocation could occur starting with the September superblock, which occurs at the end of September.
So then why is Dash Core Group asking permission to put this change in 0.16 in a proposal as opposed to just putting it in 0.16?
Yeah, so you know, oftentimes we will make changes to the code without a vote. We do that when the change is clearly beneficial. It's not controversial at all. We have held decision proposals in the past. I think the last one was all the way back at the end of 2015 or beginning of 2016, when we voted for a block size change. And so when a change is potentially controversial, or could result in the network having different preferences on it, we feel that it's best to actually get a formal vote, because that can have the effect of bringing the community together behind the solution, even in cases where they may personally disagree with it. Second is, we didn't want to force users to choose between all of the good stuff that's included in version 0.16. We're backporting all of Bitcoin version 0.16 in this release, as well as some enhancements and bug improvements and all of these things. They may have wanted all of that, but not necessarily wanted the block reward reallocation. And so this separates those decisions and allows us to get a clear signal from the network on whether or not to include this in the code. Whenever you're dealing with, I believe that it's a good idea to have a formal decision proposal when you're changing fundamental aspects of the protocol itself, or the set of rules that underlie the network. And so this is one of those examples where I think it made a lot of sense, just to bring the community together behind the solution and get a very clear signal from the masternodes on what their preferences are. And by the way, there are other aspects that we haven't voted on yet. We haven't really talked about those, that change the proposal system itself. And so that's another set of changes.
Yes. We'll address that momentarily. What was the process that you went through, Ryan, you or your team members, of engaging with Dash stakeholders of all sizes about these changes?
Well, I think that during the idea stage, I was kind of observing what was occurring on the network. Through 2018 and into 2019, there was still net creation of, or net new creation of masternodes, but that began to tail off and actually start to reverse. I really felt like it was an issue that needed to be addressed. And I raised it internally within the team first, and kind of worked on this in October, November of last year, presented it to the team to see whether or not we had consensus within the team that something needed to be done to address this issue. When it was clear that there was support among the management team, I brought the issue forward to the network itself. I, of course, shared it with our core devs and simply got their agreement that we would explore the solution space there. I presented at Dash's open house in December of 2019, Dash Core Group's open house in December of 2019.
That's right.
Really to share the initial thinking with the network. We wanted to bring the network along with us on the journey. Got some feedback from the community after that. We held discussions in Dash Forum, which is a community platform for discussions, and held discussions on various aspects of the presentation and what we might do in order to address these. Kind of raise the objections, basically, and then we kind of took that back, started exploring potential solutions technically, began ruling things out that wouldn't work technically or may risk aspects of the network, like may risk a hard fork, or may risk some other undesirable outcomes. And then we really started to re-engage the community and miners, I'd say in the springtime. Also consulted with folks from Arizona State University and economists and so on to try and gather more input if we could. Ultimately came to a solution that I was comfortable with. Started presenting that internally. We got a lot of challenges and pushback internally that kind of improved the answer, and ultimately went to the network with a presentation on what we think the ideal solution looks like in, I think that was early June. The reaction was quite positive. And although not everyone is perfectly aligned, I think that it was a solution that a lot of people were generally happy with. I did spend quite a bit of time in Discord, kind of doing some polls and engaging with masternode owners that are in the MNO channel in Discord. Ultimately, I think there was a push by some to finally get this thing to a vote, and that's what we did this month. And yeah, it's very clear at this point that the level of support is quite high. It's also high outside of the masternode community. I think that the community as a whole kind of views this as quite positive, and I've engaged with people through some of our social media or social networks and Discord and so on, and I think there's very strong levels of support generally for it. And so I think the process that we went through was thorough. I think that it was involving experts, it was involving the community. We did a lot to explain the reasoning behind the decisions that were being made. And I think that that level of engagement is what is allowing us as a community to move forward so cohesively through such a potentially controversial change.
Wow, that is a lot. That is one thing that can never be said of you, Ryan, that you are not exhaustive and thorough in your research and idea formulation. It is
thank you.
He's a good man and thorough.
Well, one of the criticisms that I have heard is, how much time have you sunk into this? And it has taken a long time in terms of when we first formulated the ideas all the way through to today. I would say that it didn't involve like, you know, our entire platform team or something getting diverted onto this or something. It was, you know, Glenn helped me with it a lot. A couple of the core devs spent some time with me. You know, it was a slow burn with very few people involved, kind of a percentage of our time. And so, you know, I would like to address concerns of, have we been distracted by this? And I think the answer is no. This is one of many of my goals that I've been working on over the last 6 months. And sometimes nothing happened for a month or two because we were focused on other things. But, you know, it was important to me to get this done. And a chunk of my time went into it, but it certainly wasn't enough to keep us from being able to accomplish our other goals.
Got it. So then let's talk about what you referenced a bit earlier, which is that the contents of this proposal is not even the whole shebang, that there are other changes you'd like to see made and that those will come in a future proposal. So roughly what are those changes and when can we anticipate to see that proposal?
Yeah, so the other main set of changes is that we want to change the proposal system itself so that it's more effective. The proposal system has been an amazing asset for Dash. It's really allowed us to develop much more than, you know, similar sized coins. It's allowed us to develop our ecosystem of everything from ATMs to services to merchants. All of that has grown as a result of the proposal system. And so we wanted to kind of retain the core functionality there, but make it more effective. And specifically, the behavior that we've seen in the past is when the price of Dash went up in 2017, 2018, we saw some of these very large, expensive proposals for things that simply didn't make a lasting impact for Dash. We did some celebrity endorsements and some large expenses on things that ultimately didn't pan out. And so what we and then when the opposite is happening, when the price of Dash is low, we've seen some of the core teams that saw high levels of support in the past get defunded. Mm-hmm. And a lot of masternode owners expressing, well, why can't we allocate more of the budget towards that? We're restricted, you know, by the constraints of the budget system. And so we wanted to do away with both of those effects. For the former, the reason for it is because it doesn't affect masternodes to approve proposals. It's a totally separate funding bucket, and so a lot of masternodes kind of viewed that as, quote, free money. We have to spend it. And although I think that attitude has changed somewhat, nonetheless, I think it's healthy to create some dynamic there where approval of a proposal has some impact. So that
it comes out of somebody's pocket directly.
Exactly. And if it partially is coming out of the masternode's pocket or affects the rewards positively or negatively, depending on whether that proposal gets funded, it really causes them to question, is there value here? Am I just approving this to spend money, or am I approving this because there's a value here? And that's the healthy dynamic we want to create. The second aspect is there are times when the masternode network might want to invest. Say a great opportunity came along. You know, can we spend more than the 10% cap that's in place today? And so the set of changes that we're proposing is, number one, we want to raise the cap from 10% to 20% of the available funding that could go towards proposals. Mm-hmm. But we also want to link that with a set of changes that cause the masternode rewards to actually change in response to the decisions being made. Mm-hmm. To create that healthy dynamic that even if the price of Dash were to skyrocket, we're not going to go approving anybody that comes, you know, with an idea, that they really have to prove that there's value. And so what this will do is it'll proportionately reduce then the portion that is going towards masternodes and miners in their reward allocations. one of the criticisms of this is, why should miners have to, quote, pay for something? We could frame this one of two ways. We could say that the proposal system is 20% and unused portion is a bonus to miners and masternodes. And when you phrase it that way, people's attitudes change very quickly. But I think the answer, like one of the criticisms is, well, miners won't like that. And the truth is, miners like it a lot. And the reason is counterintuitive. Why would they want to participate in or have their income dictated by whether or not a proposal passes? So the truth is that miners actually like this a lot. And the reason is because they thrive off volatility. When the price of Dash goes down, they obviously don't benefit. You know, a lot of the less efficient miners drop off the network, but it's a challenging time for miners. If the price of Dash goes up, but it goes up very slowly, they also don't benefit in any meaningful way. And the reason is because that allows time for mining equipment to be manufactured, purchased, deployed, and ultimately any excess margin is eaten away by additional capacity being added to the network. The only scenario in which miners really make excess returns is when the price of Dash moves up, and it moves up very quickly. And what a variable miner reward actually does is it supercharges that effect for them. If the price of Dash moves up quickly, it's likely that the budget will, a good portion of the budget would go unspent, because it takes time for new teams to be added to the network and gain trust enough to, have a significant proposal themselves. And so this actually has a small effect on boosting masternode or miner rewards at precisely the time when it benefits them the most. And so that's something that they're actually excited about, that they actually want to see happen on the network. And it's one of the things that's beneficial to them in this set of changes that otherwise isn't, right? A reallocation away from miners is not necessarily a positive thing. We do think there's some accretive effects to price that offset almost all of that effect, at least over the lifetime of their current equipment. But this is kind of a way to kind of mitigate some of the effects for them. It allows them to participate in a meaningful way if the price of Dash does move up quickly. And so between all of these changes, it gives the proposal system flexibility to fund what's needed. It gives masternodes a real incentive to vote, because if they fail to vote, it can affect their income.
Right.
And thirdly, it's a net benefit to miners, counterintuitively, that between the effects on price of the reallocation and the variable miner reward, those two things are really beneficial to miners.
Well, it sounds like you really have thought of everything, Ryan. Anyone wanting to know more about this proposal that's currently in, or this second proposal that we've just discussed once it comes into the network? Oh, by the way, no, I didn't get that from you, Ryan. Approximately when do you see this second proposal coming in?
Well, we didn't want to run the two proposals in parallel. Right. And the reason for that is because there was a possibility that some masternodes would only want the second set of changes, including an expanded budget allocation maximum, if the reallocation were approved.
Got it.
And so we wanted to separate those and then vote on them in separate time periods. We could go up to the network in August with it. That seems likely to me.
Okay.
But there also isn't time pressure. We may put it up in September, in order to allow some more time for discussions if those are warranted. But my best guess at this point in time is that we'll probably put that up to the network in early August.
Okay. Well, very good. Thanks so much for that, Ryan. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you.
Yes. Details about these proposals can be found in the links posted in the description below. And that's all I have for you this week. Until next time.